Hi. So let's take a look at what we're going to learn today. I was lucky enough to go to Mexico a couple of years ago and follow in Cortez's footsteps. And so this is kind of that journey or parts of that journey. So a little background is that Cortez arrived in Cuba in 1519. Um, and this man named Diego Velázquez was the governor of Cuba. Cortez worked for him and basically decided to go out on his own and was not backed by the crown uh, or Velázquez at that time. So, it was something that you just didn't do. But he was not the first person who ever tried to get out on this expedition to hit the mainland. But he was the one that was the most successful. By trade, he was an attorney. He comes from a family in Extremadura, España, an only child, but a large outlying family of cousins. Many things that you read about him will tell you that he came from these wild Extremeños from the family of Monroy, which is kind of interesting. So he attended university where he got his law work. Became a notary and lived and worked in Sevilla for a while. And then by 1506, he's arrived in the Indies or the islands, basically, still a very young man, 26 years old. And, doesn't live too long. I mean, he dies in 1547. So the expedition itself was 20 ships, about 600 men. Most of them were from the same area in Spain that he was. And most people think that there was just one huge wave of conquistadores, but there were many waves. They kept coming up through the mid 1500s. So it's not always those first early guys that are called conquistadores. Some of the things they brought with them were, of course, the arquebus, the rifle type of gun, horses, which the New World people had never seen, other types of artillery. And one of the interesting things is when we were on these trips, I was taking photos of all of the different menus, which is on the right side here. The food was actually fabulous. So they landed in Veracruz and set up their base there. Cortez had the ships burned. The Mexica Indians had this vision that they would see a man from the sea. And so when he arrived, it sort of fulfilled that prophecy. And, when he gets there, spends, parts of the summer traversing through the jungle, basically, on his way to Tlaxcala. And it was in November 1519 that he actually finally met Moctezuma in Mexico City. So lots of things happen in the first 6 months while he was there, making his way inland. This is sort of the route that he took. Over on the right side, San Juan de Aluya, up to the Veracruz that he founded, up and over and around. And basically, most of the places that he traveled to, there was pyramids along all these roads and routes and jungles. So kind of just something that he would have probably never really seen until he came to Mexico. This is a trip I took by bus. Took him 6 months. In technicality, it's about a 6-hour car drive. My bus trip was about 2 weeks, so pretty much followed the same road that he took. This is a depiction of Veracruz with ships landing, people being brought over by boat, the donkey taxis, as I call them, that people would get on and immediately leave the area to Mexico City. Lots of yellow fever. So another thing's malaria. People didn't want to get sick. So what happens when the New World meets the Old World? Well, the Old World brings a lot of stuff and equipment, things that they thought they needed. And the New World people had never seen a horse or a wheeled cart or possibly iron plows and horseshoes and things like that. They also brought wine, music, guitars, slavery, and there was smallpox, which continued well into the 1800s, even in New Mexico, with these smallpox outbreaks. So this is immigration in the colonial period of Mexico in the 1500s. This is San Juan de Uluya. And up to the 20th century, it was a fortaleza, prison, and now it's a museum. It is across the harbor from the mainland, and all ships would stop here. No passenger lists exist for this area, and consider this sort of the gateway to New Spain. Every single person coming from Spain would come here first, and then from there they would outsource to the mainland. Cortés, with his men, had 100 sailors. Of those men, 16 horses and 14 cannon. And all this time while he's on the coast in Veracruz, Moctezuma had already been informed that he was there and dispatched a delegation of 5 people to meet him along with some gifts. So their internet web of communication was actually rather vast. This is what it looks like from the water. It's really very ugly. And then, of course, the harbor in Veracruz. So visitors often complained about yellow fever and pirates. The Dutch, French, and English all had pirates. And together, all 3 of them sacked the city. They took about 4 million pesos in money and goods. So here you can see the walled city of Veracruz with the Uluya Island off to the left. And it serves many purposes besides fortification. There's water, tides, hurricanes. And so it's a big defensive wall, basically. This is the Baluarte de Santiago. It is another fort with defensive walls that they've been able to excavate. There's only a few remaining pieces, and they believe it was started about 1630. On your left is a typical Veracruz gentleman walking the streets with his wife. It's just kind of interesting to see them all fussied up. It's kind of fun to see. And then on the right side is the outside of the church cathedral plaza area. They do have a historical archive in Veracruz and a city cronista, which is like a town historian. The records there began in 1850. Due to humidity, water, just other things, their archives don't go back very far. So Cortés founded what is known as La Villa Rica de la Veracruz Antigua. So this old Veracruz. And after landing on shore 21 April 1519, they march up the coast and founded this city at May 18th, about a month later. The first ayuntamiento or town government was established here. And in 1525, the settlement was officially moved to Antigua, which is like a block away. So it's all relatively there in the jungle. This is the Ermito de Cortés, which he built. They say he lived near here. The tiles are from Spain within the courtyard where they have the Stations of the Cross. The new building is in the front. You can see the domed building in the back. Here's an interior photo. They do have a lot of paintings on the ceilings that still remain. So it's just really kind of an interesting, very humble church, hermitage, I guess you would say. There's a lot of tile work with poetry in this little town. Here's where we have the old world meets the new world. Kind of says, we stretch our hands to our Spanish brothers because we are an inherent race of indigenous wisdom and bravery of Iberia. And on the back, there's also part of the Castillo writings and poetry and things along those lines. It's very beautiful. This is, they say, where he lived, but I don't think they really know. It just looks old, but I mean, it's very wet and humid there, so things age faster. This is a church in that courtyard. One of the interesting things they pointed out was these bell pulls that are outside of the church, and people would do that. So when they would abandon a child at the church to the doorstep, they would ring the bell, and somebody would come to the church to um, grab the baby, basically, at that point. Uh, Quibatzlan, or Zempoloa is easier to say, is an area where Cortez's men stayed for a while. It's also known as the Cerro de los Metates, where Cortez met some Aztecs, or the first encounter of Aztecs. You can see the ocean from here. It is mountainous, a lot of pyramids, and so they could see ships coming or leaving if they so wanted to. The other town he would have passed through was where he met the fat cacique. This town has defensive walls, underground water, drainage pipes, and he was here in May of 1519. At that time, the population was about 30,000. So I'm sure with 600 men, he felt somewhat inferior in terms of numbers of people. Anyway, the fat cacique was an ally of Cortez, and wanted him to overtake Moctezuma. So there was some allies along the way as he passed. So this is Coatepec. It's in the coffee country. It is the Pueblo Mágico, as they call them. It's a tourism advertising thing where you go to these Mágico towns, and there's just more things to do, etc. There's a plaza, quite a bit of entertainment, a cathedral, a zocalo, and near here in Jalapa is the Encomienda de Lancero, granted to Lancero by Cortez. This plantation has been restored. He was one of the first wave of conquistadores. There's gardens, lakes, a full-size church. General Santa Anna owned the property in the mid-1800s. And Jalapa is the capital of the state of Veracruz at about 7,200 feet. So it's, about as high in elevation as Taos is. Cold, moist climate. They have a Museo de Antropología, the second best one in Mexico. The first one is in Mexico City. But if you ever get a chance to visit this place, it is pretty unique. A lot of mahogany, a lot of tile. They actually, in the top where they have the vigas, they put tile in between the vigas. A lot of mosaic art. Lancero died in 1580, and presumably when he died, the city of Jalapa took over, and it's changed hands many times. You can see on the right the cobbled roadway down to the end of the entrance. And then on the top left is the tile work that's in between the vigas. It's actually pretty unique looking at it. And then after that, we went to have lunch at a Spanish restaurant with paella. Another area we visited was the region known as the Encomienda de Juan Jaramillo Salvatierra, who was married to Doña Marina and then also to Beatriz Andrada. Beatriz later married Juan Velasco, a brother to the viceroy. The church here was built about 1529, and this town is known for its leather goods. Restaurants, old Basque pharmacist. Here, he was actually rather cute, letting us go around and look at his pharmacy with all the old ways of doing things. It was rather fun. Here's the plaza there, and then of course the statue when you come into town of the guy working on leather shoes. So kind of a bustling place in terms of activity. Juan Jaramillo, when he married Doña Marina, lots of things were happening then. Conquistadors were marrying indigenous women, so on and so forth. So lots of speculation here about wives and children. And at the conquest, this area, again, the Otomi power of this region converted to Christianity. So by 1533, the town and its province had been given to Juan Jaramillo. The Franciscan convent, which is on the right, is San Pedro y San Pablo, founded in 1529. So these date back relatively almost 500 years ago. By the time Cortés got to Tlaxcala, the Indians there had just rejoiced. They came into the city. There's records that there were no space on rooftops or streets. They were just thrilled to have him in town. This city officially became began building itself about 1536, and by 1563, the title of the town was added on to, called Muy Noble y Muy Leal. And then this is the facade of the oldest church there in Tlaxcala. They are famous for their murals. They have two plazas, a convento, a Plaza de Armas. The Plaza de Armas was started about 1528, and the church is called La Asunción de Nuestra Señora. They began building that about 1536. The ceiling looks Moorish. The stars at the top are gilded. It's somewhat different styles inside. There's some Renaissance in the altarpiece. There's some Baroque. And then once you walk out of the building, a little ways out of the courtyard, is a bull ring, and then the city. It's on a hill. These are some of the murals. So the murals themselves, let me go back. I went too fast here. Are more than 700 square feet of art painted by Desiderio Hernandez. Many of these are just scenes within scenes of Cortés, of Moctezuma, of the Spanish coming. And in Tlaxcala, they claim that there are Tlaxcalans all over the United States. So they have depictions of New Mexico, Texas, California, Arizona, where all their people would have transferred out to or left this area and gone. So these are quite lovely. So from there, he ends up in Huejotzingo. It's a tough one. And this is the home of the ex-convent of San Andres de Calpan, dating from about 1548. This church also has battlement walls, and they're actually very high. There's large courtyard, home to Dominican, Franciscans, et cetera, et cetera. It was a monastery, a church, a school. There's a couple of courtyards in it. And a lot of the murals that are painted inside are actually done in black and white. And they're pretty cool looking. I've never seen black and white murals depicted like that. Here's another mural, and then the Talavera baptismal font with the little sinks attached to it. Kind of just, it's rather huge actually, if you can see how big it is compared to the people standing next to it. From there, they went to Cholula, which has one of the widest zocolos after Mexico City. There's a church built on top of a pyramid. So you see the church, and underneath all of that dirt and brush is a pyramid that's buried, basically. You can enter the pyramid and walk underground to see all the corridors. If you're claustrophobic, I would not advise it. Anyway, when Cortés arrived here, they were rather hostile with him. And in October of 1519, there was a massacre, which lasted all day. Records say between 5,000 and 10,000 Indians were killed. And Cholula was the first Mexican town to proclaim the Second Empire. And again, this is on the road to Puebla, where he would have passed through, but Puebla was not founded yet. So Puebla itself is a non-indigenous or non-Indian city. It is founded and built by Spaniards. They celebrate here the 29th of September, the patron saint of Puebla. The palace for Cinco de Mayo, Zaragoza, is here. They're home to what's called China Poblana, type of dress, a lady who made her fortune with clothing, and then when she died, gave all the money to the poor. The city has many rivers. It is surrounded by mountains. One is a volcano called La Malinche, and they're also famous for their Talavera pottery. And if you are a native of Puebla, you are called a poblano. So again, founded about 1531. And many New Mexicans are have their roots in Puebla. So some of the things you can do here, it's a very international city. There's the International Museum of Baroque, if you're into Baroque. The city has cathedrals, with St. Christopher being one of the oldest paintings in the church. Doors in the cathedral are cedar. The Zocalo is called San Miguel or St. Mike, with the 7 deadly sins. On the bottom left is the library of Palafox, bishop who came and created this voluminous library with 5,000 volumes. 40% are church materials. They're in 7 languages. The second level are books that connect with God. And the third is the humanities and the profane or profanity, things like witches and the dark arts. You can do research there if you have all the proper credentials. Otherwise, you just get the tour like I did. So the middle picture is there's San Felipe de Neri, with, this beautiful door. I mean, it's gorgeous. And it's now called Concordia. They built this church about 1670. Dark granite lightened by white marble. And if you're wondering who's flanking the door, it's Peter and Paul. So lots of art, architecture, churches, different things that happened here in the city. There's a lot of plazas. The San Agustin Church, down the yellow with the yellow background, is located on Avenida de la Reforma. Again, a lot of balconies, and then a lot of Talavera tile on the outside of buildings for decor. So from here, you make your way into Mexico City, site of the pyramids of the sun and the moon. Tenochtitlan was the largest ancient city and capital of the pre-Hispanic Empire. Cortés arrives here on 8 November 1519. All the presidential palaces were begun and constructed by Cortés. And of course, this is the cathedral church in the Zocalo. This is the oldest hospital on the right, and on the left is the oldest church. And so Jesus Nazareno is the name of the hospital and the church, built by Cortés because the smallpox epidemic hit the city. The first hospital was a working hospital. It's still a working hospital, built about 1525. And on the back side of the building on the left, which is the church, is where Cortés first met Moctezuma. They brought in, different things for that meeting. But 1539, the king died, and Cortés lost quite a bit of influence at that time. So this is the inside of the courtyard of the church, with more murals depicting events, Cortés, the cannons. You can see the conquistador helmets, that type of thing. We don't know who painted the murals, but it seems like every generation there was a smallpox epidemic that would come along. So on the back side of that church, the top mural is a scene depicting when they met in 1519. And then if you were standing at the corner of the street looking across, you'd see the building on the bottom. And supposedly that's where Cortés lived. There is really nothing in Mexico City that depicts Cortés. He's kind of almost forgotten. These are the royal palaces with murals done by Diego Rivera inside. If you ever get a chance to go and look at those, they are really fantastic. Again, lots of storytelling, a lot of depictions of things. And you have to just take your time and kind of go through each one. This is an excavation that started about 50 plus years ago. It's right there in town in the middle of the plaza. There's underground tunnels. They've found many stories of this pyramid in the building. Basically, stuff that's from here goes into the archaeological museum, which is just the next building over, and they house materials like this inside of the museum. It's a big. If you're into archaeology, it's huge. So you need to make enough time to go there and see everything. So one of the other things I thought was sort of fascinating is Inquisition Plaza, which is another plaza right off the big plaza. There's a church at the end. It started its early days about 1522, but not official until about 1570. The square and the government buildings of justice are here today. The Santo Domingo Church in the back, which you see in the plaza itself, was, I guess, where they would try people for the Inquisition. There are some former customs buildings and what they call Portal de los Escribanos, or the houses of the notaries, so to speak. So one thing I did when I was there is I kept trying to find Camino Real, and they don't call it that in Mexico City. It's called Calle de Tacuba. So once I figured that out, I was able to follow maps and roads and figure the route a little bit better. And then the mole poblano that they're famous for in Puebla and Mexico is on the picture here. It's actually very good. So nice to have something authentic. Here's the street scene from the plaza. And then this is inside the cathedral. It's vast and it's wonky. So if you have vertigo, you probably don't want to walk in there too much because it is slanted. You probably get seasick or something. And this is a picture from the Grand Hotel in the evening, overlooking the Zocalo, the church, with the sun going down, the Plaza de Armas. You can see the traffic and just all the buildings. And if you get to Mexico City, you should visit the Fred Meyer Museum. He collected a lot of colonial art, and I think he died without children and left it to one of the banks, and they've ended up putting his collection together in his own museum, and it's actually quite fabulous. And I know the museums in New Mexico borrow or have borrowed in the past materials from them. Aqueducts, which you see all over, are kind of fascinating, but it was raining that day, so my picture's not that good. And then that hospital where the Cortés Hospital, there is an archive with quite a few documents, only 580 rolls of film, but the LDS has filmed that. And there's lots of things about the conquest, administrative, legal, public type of things. So if you ever get bored and you want to start looking for that, it's available. And those of you that want to try to research back into the conquistador time, there are some books out there that work. So Sumaria Relación, and then the book by Francisco y Casa, so that you can go through and start seeing if some of these names are here. And that's it. Thank you.